Cool. Hello, hello, hello. I am unreasonably North Americanly excited to be here with all of you today, and I do apologize. We've got a nice, tight little crowd, and unfortunately, there's going to be a small amount of interactivity. But I live in the United Kingdom. I am legally British now, so we're going to take it down to an appropriate amount of interactivity. If I start to spiral and get really, really overexcited about languages, just look softly uncomfortable and I'll move it on. So hi, I'm going to be talking to you about multilingual speech technologies for a global world. And the title's really intentionally chosen. This is like an ATM machine kind of vibe. We do live in a global world. We live in a world. And unfortunately, speech technologies and a lot of other technologies tend to be English first, very, very Western constructions, and sometimes very, very boring. For those of you I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, my name is Jessica Rose. I'm based here in the UK. I am extremely excited about Birmingham being the best city in the UK. I'll take feedback from Glaswegians, and that's it. I'm really, really excited about language, people, and communication. And unfortunately for all of you here today, I work the job that was pretty much invented for me. I work on the Common Voice project, where we collect a crowdsourced open language corpus of speech data from people around the world. So I like to think of it as we're sort of librarians for speech data. It's not ours, we're not making the decisions about it, but really building the shared infrastructure that people might want for their own languages. We will be talking about data and models today. So if you want, we can briefly do the hype. Is AI the future? Is AI going to replace programmers? Is AI going to replace language? Where is AI taking us? And joyously, so that I do not have to talk to the comms team about this later, well out of scope for me. Is AI the future and the only way forward? Joyously, no comment. I want to talk to you all today about small, beautiful, useful things that hopefully we can apply to big, complicated, terrifying things. We're going to mostly be looking at data today, and really, really excitingly, this is going to be mostly looking about abstract constructs. If you're really, really excited to talk about which model's the best fit, maybe not the best one, but I will joyously talk to you after class about different open source models. Speech technologies, I prefer to talk about them in the context of machine learning instead of AI, mostly because the AI hype is so big and so powerful right now. And I consistently want to call out that speech technologies and speech recognition is joyously boring. I'm especially fond of this diagram because all of the ASR, automatic speech recognition diagrams, are incomprehensible and terrible. And this one isn't just the least bad, but I quite like it. So Alshram, Ayman, and Ramsey and Alan, back in 2020, did a really fantastic paper on gender and Arabic performance for speech recognition, and they hopefully made this appropriately licensed image. So if I want to build something that recognizes human speech, I'm going to need speech data, so clips of people speaking, and I'm going to need those to correspond to some kind of text that maps that speech. On top of that, I'm going to want to build a model or ask somebody to build a model. And that's going to feed into my decoder, sort of very, very basic level, my decision-making doofer. And then over here, I'm going to have another model, a set of models, really trying to understand what's going on with the underlying language. Someone is going to speak into a process that extracts sort of the shape of the language they're using. And then the decoder is going to take the acoustic and the statistical language and pronunciation model and try and take those sounds, the shape of the sounds it can hear, and map them to text in the appropriate language. This is so messy and so interesting and so boring. I'm so delighted to get to talk to you about it. The thing I'm really, really excited about is even when we talk about really high success models and the best applications, we always talk about it in hypothesized text. So, hey, we think that this is what the person has said. As humans, many of us are really, really comfortable taking in speech data and acting on the meaning. Computers, they need to know what you planned on saying, and they like to do that with text. I'm excited because 2025 doesn't feel like there's a lot of hopeful things in the world. And speech technology is not perfect. It's not the fix for everyone, and it's not the fix for every language. But speech technology can have lower barriers for a lot of people. You don't need literacy skills. And you can get a bit huffy about that, being in London, being at a fancy conference, like, oh, people who can't read or write? No. When we're building technology for the world, there are folks out there that have a challenging time with reading and writing, or there are folks that haven't had exposure to literacy. This is genuinely cool. You don't need to use your hands. And this can be accessibility, but this can also be I'm driving an ambulance, I'm driving a big cool piece of machinery. The ability to do this while noisy stuff is going on is quite cool. You could do it while you're distracted. The looking at something and typing and keeping your eyes off of something is quite cognitively demanding. Speaking, really relatively easy for many. And it also requires less directed focus than writing. So if you're having a stressful situation, if you need emergency assistance, if you need to check and see if that mushroom you've just eaten is indeed forageable and fine, maybe speech technologies are a good way to go. Interaction, I don't know if this is lower barrier, but interactions with speech technologies often mirror the ways we talk to each other as well, making it less stressful for folks who come from a less technically enabled background. Who here has a voice assistant enabled on your phone or home devices? Oh, we're different. Oh, we've got like a very clear division, like privacy weirdos, convenience weirdos. It's not just voice assistants. The stuff I get the most excited about is the ability to, this isn't perfect, it shouldn't be used in court, but the ability to talk to someone else out loud and have a machine translate for you is beautiful. An application I've seen recently is letting farmers in, pastoral farmers, use it to check and see how their goats are doing. Hey, my goat stopped drinking water 2 days ago. Is this chill? Hey, here's actual valuable information. Privacy securing medical services platforms, so on-device interpretation so that you don't need to share your medical device with an in-community translator. Assistive technologies. I can't use my hands right now or can't use them. Automatic transcriptions, which are hit and miss as well, but really anything where you want to talk to someone or talk to your computer. Speech technologies aren't voice assistants, but voice assistants are a really great way to look at where speech technologies fall down and don't. How many languages exist in the world, and what's a language, and what's a variant, and what's a dialect is very much the tabs versus spaces of linguistics. We're going to go ahead and say at least more than 7,000 discrete languages exist in the world. Right now, if you want to use a popular voice assistant, you are going to have a fantastic time doing this with about 20 languages. And you're probably only going to have a fantastic time if you're using one of those 20 languages with a reasonably standard accent. So these aren't the only problems. It's not just a lack of language coverage, but also a massive underrepresentation of the way people functionally speak. When we're looking at most speech technologies, men are better recognized than women. People in their 20s are better recognized by these speech technologies. People of color are less recognized. People from indigenous backgrounds. It's not fairly applied right now because speech technologies haven't been designed to listen to everyone. And this is really, really fundamental. It's literally that these haven't been designed. These individual acoustic models, these individual language and pronunciation models are all built on language data. These data sets are linguistically limited in themselves. They're proprietary, they're often closed source, and they are incredibly expensive. If you're building speech technologies right now and you want to talk to your boss and say, hey, it's a huge market, we really need to add Kiswahili to this. Fantastic, great. It's just going to cost us an extra 10 grand. Again, probably a harder sell in 2025. You're much more likely to wind up with a speech application that works well enough in English, French, and German. These can be limited in demographic scope. When folks building these data sets go out, they go out and pay a really insultingly small amount of money to folks who are casual workers. If I needed 50 people to go ahead and give me some speech clips today, I'd probably do what a lot of these data collectors do and head to a university or head to someplace where there's a lot of casual workers. You tend to get a lot of folks in their 20s. And they do tend to be collected by teams that don't have a lot of knowledge in the regional language. If you chucked me into a Spanish-speaking organization right now and asked me to make really good data collection choices for Spanish, you would have a fantastic amount of terrible Spanish data. And we do tend to see this with less represented languages. And you say, well, Jess, that's trash. All of that sucks and everything's terrible. These speech technologies are limited because the ASR models built on top of these are being trained in a way that doesn't reflect the way real people speak. What can I do to fix this? Cool. I can tell you what we did, not in a sales pitchy kind of way, but in a, here's what I'd like you to take into consideration about the different facets of the data. And really, because if you'd like to, I'd love to see other folks doing individual data collection. So all of these different lessons are selection lessons that we built, we've learned because we built an open source data collection platform for speech. Been running since 2017. We've built out a robust optional metadata tagging system for that. And the big thing I want to stress is this is not our data, so we just curate and package that up under a CC0 license every single quarter. If you wanted to do this yourself, which you absolutely can and should, I love open speech data, here's how we do it. The big thing I'd like to stress at first is we've never added a language without a request from someone from that language community. If I came to an individual language community and said, hey, good news, I've decided that we're going to include your speech for you in this CC0 data set, that's both weird and not cute. So somebody will request a language. Because we're asking individual contributors, we work with localizers to give them a website that makes sense. If I'm asking you for Brazilian Portuguese speech data, and I'm asking you to use a website in English and give your consent for your data in English? No, not even remotely. We collect or solicit the writing of copyright-free sentences that the contributors can read. We go ahead and launch it, say, cool, congratulations, here's your new language. We're going to continue to provide the infrastructure for that. People come in and contribute their voices. Other people will listen to that and say, oh, this speech does indeed, this clip I'm listening to says what the sentence says, not a problem. And that's it. It is someone else's data. We just package it up and make it available every 3 months. So if you wanted to do this yourself with data collection, the first thing I'd want you to carefully consider is both the license and the consent. So there's a ton of ASR and speech text models right now that are pre-trained and pre-trained on data which many extrapolate came from, no, it's fine. There's a bunch of very popular speech models right now that there's a decent chance were large-scale scraped from audios from YouTube or popular movies or other licensed material. So thinking all of y'all are good people, everybody who could possibly be watching this on the internet in the future, there's no bad people on the internet. If y'all were going ahead and collecting speech data and training your own models, you'd want to think really, really carefully around how have folks consented and what kind of license do we want to make this available under. We've gone for a CC0 license, which to show my age is the most YOLO of licenses. And it's genuinely just saying, we reserve no rights to this. This data has been collected. You don't need to cite us. If you write an academic paper, it's quite nice too. It's not ours. You can repackage it. You can sell it. You can effectively use this in whatever way you want. And one thing I'd like to flag is, while Common Voice has decided to take this approach, this is not an appropriate approach for all languages, and this is not an appropriate choice for all language communities. We've talked to indigenous language groups who've said, we don't want big tech using this. Fantastic. This is not a CC0 problem. So really thinking about the data I'm collecting, is it proprietary? Or the data I'm sourcing from external sources, is it okay for me to use this? If you're looking to include more linguistic groups, literally just looking at the scope of the languages you include. As of today, the data set we work to curate has 130 languages, which is an absolutely exhausting and delightful responsibility. We've got a team of about 7 people and functionally speak about 24 languages amongst us. There's absolutely no way we would be supporting some of these really, really interesting languages without people asking for it and supporting it amongst themselves. I love to ask, can anybody guess what language we've got the most data for? Mandarin. Oh, our Mandarin's not great. Yeah, so the data collection for a lot of Chinese languages tends to be very onshored. Oftentimes folks guess English. Our largest data set in number of hours of speech is Catalan. The Catalan language community and all of our resurgence language communities are really joyously intense. No, in a good way. I'm not making fun. Other folks, I'd like to go ahead and I love all of these equally. They are all my perfect, precious children. The Welsh community, absolutely stunning, doing amazing things. Igbo, and a lot of the conlangs in Relangua and Esperanto are really, really passionate. So you need to go ahead and add more languages, not a problem, easy, simple, which only brings us to the next question, which is absolutely not going to hurt us at all, and no one will ever argue about this, which is what is a language, and what's a major linguistic variant, and what's an accent? Is anybody Scottish? Oh, alas, me neither. Asking folks to definitively say the way I speak English and my Glaswegian best friend to say, hey, is this the same language? If we haven't been at the pub, it is indeed, probably. We're looking at interoperability. We can understand each other. But a variant is a major differentiator where we're still mutually intelligible. Okay. And what we've done on Common Voice is define major variants. A non-English example of this would be looking at Brazilian and Portugal Portuguese. People can understand each other, but these are different enough where we're going to define separate variants. And then accents get absolutely wild. And you might think, accents are pretty much okay. Once I teach my model that cat is cat, accent shouldn't be that big of a deal.
What's the buttons?
Oh no, they installed voice recognition technology in us. Lift, I heard about this.
Voice recognition technology in a lift in Scotland. You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
I recommend the rest of the clip, but it is cut off for swearing reasons. I'm based here in the United Kingdom where everything's fine and everything's going to continue to be fine. Everything's fine. And if anybody's ever had to call HMRC, our local tax folks, I have to put on an American accent to get my tax number. So it's very 6, 4, that's not my number. So really looking at accents and how we ask people to conform or not conform to shared models can be incredibly important. Also thinking about, you're asking people to give you clips, you're ideally asking people to give you clips of their voice. Thinking about how you collect that voice data has been a really big challenge for us. Traditionally, Common Voice has been a red speech corpus, which is really common in consensual data collection for speech. Folks would come to the website, push record, and say, his research largely concerns the ecophysiology of lichens. This is a fantastic approach for many reasons. What you're doing is relatively straightforward. Please read the sentence. The challenge is, if I'm being compliant with licensing, the amount of copyright-free or the amount of accessible ethical text I have is roughly this level of weird. For different languages, we get a lot of complaints for different EU member languages saying, hey, why have I been reading 47 sentences about the reintroduction of beavers? Like, what? Because there's a ton of copyright-free material coming out of the EU Commission and other EU groups. This is a fantastic way to start something and scale it, but this is also extremely weird, both for context and also the way we read isn't the way we talk. His research even if you try really, really carefully, even if you're a secret audiobook narrating in your heart, the way we talk and the way we present and the way we read is extremely different. This is going to be a little bit weird data if you're trying to make natural sounding language recognition models. The other thing that is extremely fun about this is you're asking people to read. And this can be challenging for oral first languages or oral only languages. But for those of us who speak English or a Latin language as our first language, everything feels like it's kind of read in the same way, right? This is the Tajik alphabet, which is great because this is also the Tajik alphabet. And I've got exciting news. This, and these just say Tajik alphabet in 3 different orthographies. There are so many languages where multiple people, multiple groups and communities from around the world will share the same mutually intelligible language, but differentiate hugely on the way they write it, the way they pronounce it, and the way they spell it. What? No, we've done this. We're chill. No.
What's the button?
Everything's fine, and everything's going to be fine. No. We don't have the slide, but everything's okay. Another thing that's really, really exciting is that age in data collection almost always becomes an immensely, terrifyingly cursed issue. The folks who've got home assistants, do any of y'all have kids? Does the voice assistant respect your children? Oh, that was a question. The voice assistant sometimes respects your children, which is a really common thing because the legal, financial, and ethical constraints around data collection from kids is appropriately terrifying. Even the proprietary data sets we're seeing tend to have children really underrepresented. And this could be younger folks as well. For folks from an English language speaking background, there's another problem with how we're doing, for folks who aren't from an English language speaking background, there's another challenge. So for us, getting a sentence that's all in English may mirror the way we speak day to day. I might have an entire conversation with my friend or my mother or my boss and stay in the exact same language the whole time. Globally, this is reasonably unusual. So code switching is the practice of hopping between words from 2 different languages or 2 different language cultures. And I'd have to say, yeah, depending on where you are regionally in the world, this is significantly more common, even within the household, even when talking to one person. The closest place to hear physically, where you tend to get that really, really commonly, is hanging out with folks in the Netherlands, where you'll get Dutch, 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 3 English words, Dutch, 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 a German word that I haven't worked out, Dutch, 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 and then we've just switched into English seamlessly. Code switching is the beautiful birthright of folks who are bi, tri, or multilingual, and red speech corpuses don't really work for that. So one thing we've just started experimenting with on Common Voice is giving people the opportunity, instead of telling me about the ecophysiology of lichens by reading a sentence, asking people what they think. So this seems like an especially cruel one to pick in January in the United Kingdom, but asking someone who is who uses code switching and is an English language speaker, hey, what seasons? That's a very British question though. Hey, what's the weather like where you're from? If I'm somebody who switches between English and French and English and Spanish, you're probably going to get some really exciting additional code switching in here, which is going to give some really interesting additional context to the way people really speak. Also, not this question, but some of the other questions, this is also significantly less boring than asking somebody to read a sentence and read a sentence and read a sentence. All of this feels a little tiny bit like I don't necessarily recommend doing your own data collection. I want to be super clear that I absolutely do. When you look at the proprietary data sets, they are immensely expensive. They're really locked down, and I don't always like the consent that's come in to all of them. But not a pitch. You don't have to. If you did want to use the Common Voice data set, it's 130 plus languages, and I cannot overstate the fact that it's free. It's free, do whatever you want with it. If you build something weird, come and tell me about it. But way more importantly, it's not the only data set out there. There are smaller open source speech corpora specifically built in the language communities scattered all around the world. Taking the extra time when you're building your speech technologies to say, hey, what does exist for Bahasa Indonesia? What does exist for Betawi? What does exist for Okinawan is free, will immensely impress your boss saying, oh, we have 700 million additional potential users. And stressing the free makes it really, really difficult to shift. And the big reason I wanted to chat with all of you about this today is partially, I am immensely intense about languages and always so excited to share what I feel like is hopeful. I would ask if any of you want to talk about languages after this, please, I have no self-control whatsoever. Do not tell me about an interesting new language. I will immediately sign up for classes and ruin my life. I'm booked through the end of 2026, but if you have something after that, please do keep it to yourself. I really wanted to share something that feels hopeful. Speech technology isn't the brand new hype bubble. It's not the newest thing. It's been around long enough to be a little bit boring and that we're building real beautiful things with it right now. But it's new enough where the stuff that's broken and the stuff that's starting to calcify isn't permanent. What I really, really want is, I know matching my level of excitement is a bit grotesque, but if it's useful and if it's something that feels a little bit hopeful for you, I'd love for other people to be excited about this. You can talk to your computer. This is a science fiction development from the 60s. This is very, very old school Star Trek. This is very, very, science fiction novel. It's not magic, but it's the most boring technology that feels like magic to me. I'm also really, really excited if anybody is interested in building speech technologies. Open source, consensually sourced data sets have never been more accessible. There's more and more open source models. There's like 3 of them that have launched since I've been speaking. gluing these things together in new, weird ways has gotten really relatively cheap. And then, if you can do so without making me want to learn a new language, please, I'm desperate to learn from folks who speak regional dialects, folks who speak with regional accents, and folks who speak from regional languages to chat to me about what doesn't work in speech technologies, what's different about your language, and what folks just aren't getting right. I'd like to make sure that people building for speech technologies have fewer excuses to not build these in an inclusive way. I'd like to give people doing I'd like to give busy people who are tired and taking shortcuts fewer and fewer excuses. If you work with folks on teams who are doing this, a soft, hey, a needlessly intense old woman will yell at you if you don't include these languages for free. But also for folks who are just into tech or using voice assistants or using heavy machinery while talking to an application about your goat not having enough drinking water, I'd ask you to be absolutely vicious too. Look around and demand, hey, this not only needs to work for me, this needs to work for folks who don't sound like me. This needs to work for folks who don't have access to coming to this in their second or third or fifth language. Thank you so much. If you do want to chat to me, commonvoice@mozilla.com. It sounds like it goes to an anonymous thing. It'll be me first. That's really it. I'm so sorry I'm a last minute fill-in, so you all get a short talk. I'm super happy to take any questions, but it's a little tiny group of folks, so I'm super happy to chat one-on-one if that's easier. Oh, is the Q&A also on the video? Can we turn it off just in case I cuss?